our idea of
the
feminism. Yeah, it's like, what is feminism? What is masculine? What is masculine? The idea of a man, he being stronger than a woman and him being able to fight off a woman kind of diminishes, and it shouldn't in any kind of way diminish the fact that there are kids. Like, you have individuals like Common, who has come out about his sexual abuse story, and you have the basketball player who was on the one that was on Red Table Talk.
I don't watch Red Table Talk.
John needs to watch Red Table Talk.
I don't watch it either.
I think it's great. Well, there was a basketball player that was talking about him being molested as a child. Like, there are consistent stories.
I'm talking about Keon Doolin because I know about his story.
Yeah, like he spazzed out.
Yeah. Like when he was in the league, like. You know, like,
sorry, that
like,
wasn't the correct. Spazzing out was not the correct term. No, he had a mental breakdown.
You can't say spaz out. Like,
we say spaz out because that's how we communicate. But
to be politically,
he had a mental breakdown.
Yes, well, if you want to be, professional, but when he was playing, a lot of his teammates, when you play sports, they slap your ass and stuff. Mm-hmm. They basically said like he didn't like that because of
his passing.
But he didn't tell nobody until like when he was about to retire.
Oh,
so. But that's stuff that it's a lot with how America is designed and how a lot of things have affected. Like, just how America is designed. Like, that's just how America sees things. And if it doesn't happen to you, it's not going to be a big issue. Like, if it doesn't happen to the majority, then no one really cares about it.
Which is why these school shootings will not stop until something happens to one of these rich old white men.
But it happened at Stoneman Douglas.
Which is Parkland is a very wealthy city, town, whatever.
Parkland is like...
But...
its own, like... If Florida was to like drown, like to go under, like what's the
sea level was to rise, yeah.
Parkland would be one of the cities that would like somehow, some way would stay up because it's so much like it's rich.
Money, yeah.
Like me and my homeboys we talk about all the time. It's like Parkland compared to like Pembroke Pines, Westerns, even South Beach, like the suburbs down here, like. It make them look like poverty.
Liberty City.
Poverty in a way because Parkland is it's too perfect. Like it got the schools, it got the neighborhoods. Like,
I mean, when we went to go see houses, I was like, what am I paying all this money for? Because I live in Parkland. Like, the houses were beautiful, but it was like, ooh, y'all paying too. Like, I thought we was paying a lot. But it's because it's Parkland, and I mean, it goes back like that whole school shooting happened in Parkland, and it still hasn't done anything because it hasn't hit home to any of the individuals who are in the seats.
Right. That's like, was it Marco Rubio that one of the students said like, are you going to stop taking money from the NRA? I think it was Marco Rubio. And he didn't say no. He kept trying to dance around the answer. And it's because his child was not hurt. Mm-hmm. So if some of these state representatives, senators, congressmen, some of these people, if they personally felt the pain that these parents and these families feel, then there would be change. But until then, it didn't happen to them. So they're like, oh, okay, whatever.
And I think it's our responsibility now to start changing that narrative. Because if you look at the seats that are taken in both the Senate and in the Congress, well, in the Senate and the House of Representatives, you have nothing but, in the Senate, you have nothing but white.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's changing now. You see a lot of like
in the House of Representatives, you're seeing that change.
You're seeing a lot of blacks and Hispanics and Indians and stuff. Like that's why when we was watching what they call the midterm elections, like even some of the Republicans, like for me at the end of the day, I vote more Democrat. But if I see more, like colored people, more minorities, even Republicans or independent, for me that's still a win because you never know that person may change the idea of the party. That's why you're seeing a lot of.
And I mean,
that's why you're seeing a lot of people leaving like the White House and stuff like that because they don't agree with that, man.
I mean, it doesn't even have to depend on your party. Like, if you're... I know some Republicans who I went to school with who are black Republicans, and I understand some of the... I understand why they would want to be Republicans, and but for me, it's like, I can't do it. Like, bruh, like, do you see some of the things that these Republicans are doing? You're still a minority.
I don't think the Republican Party is what... Like the Republican Party doesn't mean the same thing as it meant during like the Bush years, the Reagan years, especially Reagan. Yeah. Like I think the Reagan Republicans are the real Republicans. Yeah. I think, or not real, but like that is what Republicans should be, air quotes or whatever. But these new Republicans, it's just the cult of Trump. Like I don't think that this is not the Republican Party. They don't stand for the same things that like the Reagan era Republicans would, like foreign, like what is it, strong foreign not trade, but trade and free trade, that's what it is. Like they don't stand for that, because if they did, half the stuff that Trump is doing now, like breaking down relationships with all of our trading partners and stuff like that, they would not stand for that. This is just
he's messing with my stuff.
He's messing, and that's the thing. Like if these were true blue Republicans, they would be like out of here. He wouldn't be allowed in there. They wouldn't have even voted him in. But because he has this cult following him of these racists and these ignorant people, like that's not Republicanism. It's not. To me, Republicanism has died. I'm not a Republican, never claimed to be, probably never will be. But I think that there's no such thing anymore. It's just
but that's
Trump.
what John was saying too. Like if you look at, like my dad said it before too, like he's not a Republican, he's a Democrat. But if he sees a Republican who shares the same things and he knows can possibly change like certain things, then why not give them the chance? Why not, But now you're getting to a point where, you guys voted, some people voted for a man who's in office who they thought, because he was a businessman, was going to treat the United States like a business. And then
filed for bankruptcy several times.
And now those individuals are starting to lose out because a lot of the things that they thought that they would get, they're not getting.
I mean, the only thing I said that's good about his term is that it's forcing people now to be, all right, we don't have to be full-throttle entrepreneurs, but let's create businesses on the side, because you never know what him is like. You seen with the whole the government shutdown that people was out for like 2 months, almost 2 months. Yeah. But they was like, I can create a company on the side or a hustle or whatever. That's the only positive thing that he done, and other stuff like the. Well,
he's exposed racism.
Yeah, I was going to say he's exposed it.
Racism, sexism,
and he also
classism, all this.
With me, like growing up in Miami, Florida, it's kind of, I was like, every time I say this because I grew up around a lot of Hispanics, particularly the Cubans, but I was hurt when I found out that they voted for him. And I'm like, do y'all know that y'all know that y'all niggas at the end of the day?
But they don't see it like that, especially white Cubans.
And like, my best friend, he talked about it the other day. Well, some Hispanics was born, they came from the Spanish and stuff. I'm like, I know that's true. No. But at the end of the day, we all come from the motherland at the end of the day. If you know your history, if you very, pro-black or whatever, you should know that all of us came from there anyway. And majority of us from recent history, we always on that same fucking boat. Somehow, some way, we mixed, we blended, we had our own islands, our own countries, whatever. And for me, like, when I found out that they voted for him, I'm like, I'm not gonna feel bad when he deports y'all grandparents and stuff like that. Because the fact that y'all voted for him. Like, I know some Cubans now that's Democrat.
Before we move on from that, I just really want to clarify. If you were from the West, with the Caribbean, if you're Cuban, Dominican, Puerto Rican, if you're one of those Latinos, your original people were the Taino people, and they were killed off. When we were watching She's Gotta Have It,
Columbus did it.
Yes, Columbus did.
Mm-hmm. And they still got statues of food.
Yes.
Columbus Day needs to be abolished. I know people are starting to call it Indigenous Peoples Day, but like that man was nothing but a biological terrorist.
But
he was an auntie.
Just a quick history on that. You had Tainos in those islands, in technically all of the West Indies. You had Tainos. Some other islands had other different types of indigenous people. And then
they was here too.
They were here too, but you had a mixture of different indigenous people. And then, like we learned in She Gotta Have It, some Africans were actually brought over as free Africans. They were brought over and they lived there. And then when the indigenous people started to die off, and they started to kill off the people, then they turned them into slaves. So if you are a Latino and you do a 23andMe, you're going to find Indian, Chinese, Spanish, everything that you could think of under the sun, because so many people have come through. Unless you're from South America, like if you are a Latino from South America, they are, but they don't have
them are German too.
They don't have as much mixture as Caribbean Latinos. Brazilians? Well, they have, their mixture isn't as much, because if you look at like a Latino from the Caribbean, you'll find a lot more different types of things than you would if you go to Central America. Because Central America, that's what the real niggas do.
I feel like you have Americans, like they still have that Aztec and Mayan.
That's why a lot of those areas still have those Aztecs, Inca, Mayan background, but then they also didn't have as much
of the African diaspora.
They had African diaspora, but they didn't have as much of the mixture. Because like I know some of my friends who are Latino, they've done their 23andMe and they've found like Chinese.
I have Chinese in me.
They have found Alaskan, not Alaskan, like Inuit. Like they have found like crazy mixtures that you would not think of because of how much would come in and out. Whereas I've heard from Central America, they have a lot of African, because yes, they did get a part of the African slave trade, but they don't have as much of the different mixtures as like if you were to look. I don't know, because the people that I've taught, like from what I've heard, that's what I've heard.
And that's crazy because, like, not crazy, but it's interesting because the like Central Americans I know are very mixed. And what
are you from, though?
Belize. Both are Belizean. Okay. But they're very different. Like one's family is like very Afro-Belizean. I don't know if that's the correct term, but there's a lot of African admixture in there. And then with my other friend, she's very mixed as well, but there's a lot of Mayan. Like you can even like see looking at her. When I met her, I thought she was Trini. Because, like, I guess phenotypically she looks like an East Indian girl, maybe. But then you hear her speak, and it's like, oh, no, he's straight up from Belize. But, like, she was saying that her family, looking at all of them, like, you could walk into a room full of her family and not know any of them were related because they all look so different. They go from light to dark. That's the beauty of
Latinos.
Yeah, it's very interesting. That's the beauty of the human race.
Yes.
We're all just interesting.
We bleed the same, but we're all different.
Mm-hmm. And we all, like, you never know. Like, when I got my 23andMe results back, I was like, whoa.
I'm dying to do it.
And when I got my mom's back, I was even more... and I don't want to sound like a racist, but I was kind of uncomfortable with the amount of European blood my mom has. And it made me ask a lot of questions. And I think that's one thing about 23andMe, kind of side note, it'll make you ask questions about your family that maybe secrets have been buried for centuries. Because my mom, it came back that my mom is 75% African, 24 point something European, and then the rest is like Asian. And so I said, well, that means one of her parents was biracial. But according to my mom, no, straight up black. But I'm like, if you're only 75% black, that means that one of your parents was biracial. Well, my grandfather was very, very dark skinned, like clearly black, but my grandmother was lighter skinned. One of her sisters has red hair and freckles.